Hi, I'm Jack Cassel, and I'm Nasdaq's head of U.S. listings. In my role here at Nasdaq, I oversee our IPO business, helping companies pick Nasdaq as they work through that transition of private to public. After retiring from Major League Baseball in 2010, I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do. So I started to network with as many people as I could. I started with dads of my buddies, all the way to former professional athletes that had made that transition, to even owners of some of the clubs I had played for. And I think the kind of common denominator or conclusion was start somewhere, a larger institution or company that has a training program, because then they'll make that investment on you, and I won't have to catch up with some of my peers or other constituents there, and I'll get that training. So with that, I started to call around, continue to network, and I actually cold called managing director at Morgan Stanley in San Francisco. So shout out to John Orfino, who took my call and invited me in. And I was able to land a role there on the private wealth team in San Francisco. So that kind of got things kicked off for me. A few years later, I had decided that I wanted to go back and get an MBA. So I went 2 years of business school, and coming out of that, then I went and joined an investment bank, Growth Point Technology Partners, focused on technology, M&A, and kind of cross-border deals. It was a great education and kind of continued process from the MBA into banking. And then in 2018, fortunately, I was connected with Jeff Thomas here at Nasdaq, and was able to land the role here as then it was running the IPO business for just the Western US, and then that role has now evolved to the US. I always had an interest in the markets. Part of this was just coming through or playing baseball, I should say. There's a lot of downtime in baseball, so I was one of the few guys that would pick up the Wall Street Journal or read the money section of the USA Today. My parents, and growing up in Los Angeles, I was actually more attracted to film. I was a film production major in undergrad. And then as things progressed and baseball kind of took off, I looked at that opportunity, as well as even technology was something of interest. But I felt the financial markets and broader services was just more my speed, and there was an actual interest there. And I think the other element that I really liked about it is it's ever evolving. It's always changing. From the market's up, the market's down. Like, we're going through some periods now that were not necessarily unforeseen, but we have to change our strategy. We have to change the way we lead our teams, the way we coach our employees, the way we also talk to our clients. So I think that was one of the key draws to the financial markets, and I'm glad I made that choice. Yeah, I think there's a lot of things I draw on from my previous career in professional sports to now leading teams, and specifically sales teams. I think the first thing is just the mindset. In baseball especially, it's a game of failure, it's a game of adversity, it's a game of adjustments. And I think you'll hear that from most professional athletes. You're always having to tweak here and tweak there, refine your strategy, refine what you're going to do to achieve your goals. So bringing that forward to our team, and as I mentioned before, around the evolution, I should say, of the financial markets, we're constantly having to tinker with our strategy and our go-to-market, but also staying positive, staying focused, and not getting beat down by deals that don't go our way or things we could have done better. How do we continue to learn and improve from those experiences? I think the second part is certainly discipline, and then with that, I also couple it with preparation. You have to stay focused on those goals. I'm a big goal setter. I write everything down. And so making sure that everything I'm doing throughout a day or a week is not only helping myself achieve what I have set out to do, but also the broader team and honestly, the broader Nasdaq mission. I think that's one great thing about Nasdaq, is that everybody on the team and on the bus, so to speak, is really moving in the same direction towards those goals. And so from professional sports, there's certain times where you don't want to get up early or you don't want to have to stay late, but you do, because you know that investment of time and effort is going to pay off towards your goals later. And I take that same mindset and approach here in my career now, and also around preparation. right? There's a lot of prep that goes into every single game or match or round if you're a golfer, or meet if you're a swimmer. You're not only practicing and refining the physical piece, but also, again, the strategy. Who are your opponents? How do we make sure we have an edge going into that? So pulling that forward, making sure that as we go to have conversations with prospects or clients, that our team is prepared, that we know what we want to say in our agenda, what are our actions that we want to achieve here, and then also the discipline around that follow-up. So I think a lot of those are good parallels that I draw on, and I think the team does well here. Well, it's always competitive. There's always somebody new. As soon as you feel like you've got to the top, or you've made a little name for yourself, you look behind you and there's 500 men or women coming for your job, right? They want to be the next one. And I think that one of the differences was a little bit easier, I'd say, in professional sports, is that you were actually able to see your opponent, right? As I think about baseball, and as a pitcher, or even as a hitter, you're able to see and size up who your opponent is and what their strengths and weaknesses are. And so there's a physical element to that. In financial services, you don't have that. It's a bit more opaque. You may know the firm you're competing with, or even the other rep or banker that you're competing with, but it's not really on the field. So you're having to make adjustments in a different way. That said, though, I think, again, kind of the competitiveness, one, to win, is tough to turn off. And sometimes, as much as we accept failure and we grow from that, it stings. But I do love that. And that, for me personally, that's what drives me, is continuing to win and continuing to make sure our team's doing everything they can to be in a good position to win every single deal and win every single opportunity in front of us. And then two, I think, again, around the strategic piece, how do we continue to get smart? How do we leverage the knowledge base that we have, but think strategically around where things are going to be in the next 6, 12, 24 months, even 5 years? How do we get ahead of that curve so that, again, we're in a great position from a competitive standpoint and have that edge? My best advice for aspiring leaders is to be thoughtful around your plan. And I think, from professional sports, I've played for a lot of good coaches, and I'm fortunate to win a lot of games and even championships. I've also played for some bad coaches, and I've seen the damage they do, not only for that team, but for each individual. You get a bad coach and all of a sudden you feel that you're not adequate anymore, or maybe, the game's passing you by, and then you see guys get on a different team, and all of a sudden they're back. People are like overnight success, but they don't realize, again, that grind that they had to come through, and a lot of it went up to their coach or again, their leader. So being thoughtful and understanding that your decisions will affect each individual differently, and just being thoughtful around that, and you're not going to make everybody happy, and that's not your job. But being thoughtful around that and the way you communicate and convey that, I think, it's going to serve you well in the long term. I think, as a leader, you have to make a lot of decisions, and many times with only a fraction of the data or the information you need to make that decision. So I think also being thoughtful around that approach, in the sense that this will also not only affect everyone differently, but it also sets precedent for your future decision. So as a former pitcher, my pitch on why private companies should list on Nasdaq is because Nasdaq is the exchange of the future. We are home to the most innovative and disruptive companies in the world that have changed the way we communicate, the way we do business together, the way we interact in commerce. And so we are the home to those companies that are rewriting tomorrow.